Hello and welcome to this class on Power BI. We are going to learn how do we use Power BI for importing the data, cleaning the data, transforming the data, and analyzing it for our powerful visualizations. And then after that, we will also be learning how do we share the data through the dashboards and the Power BI service with others so that they can engage or they can interact with our visualizations or dashboards. So thank you very much for joining into this class. We are going to explain first what are the recommended hardwares that we have to have for using the Power BI. Now, Power BI is a powerful tool and it requires a good RAM and a good processing power to be able to run into the system. So the available RAM for this system is 1.5 GB or more, even though 1 GB is recommended or minimum mentioned by the Microsoft. 1.5 GB is or more is better to have, then it will be having a good performance. CPU performance has to be 1 gigahertz or faster, and it could be a 86 or a 64-bit processor, so that it can take up the calculations easily. Then you have to have a display size of minimum 1400 into 900 or better 1600 into 900, and you do display setting for the text should be 100% or less. uh, then we are going to look at now what is the Power BI, what is the business intelligence, why Power BI is used. So Power BI is a tool for business intelligence. Now business intelligence means that we are going to get the data from different sources. So we get the data from text files, from our ERPs, from the websites, in the CSV format, in the text format, in the PDF format, through the database. So there are multiple ways the organizations produce financial data or or the marketing data or the customer data or any other kind of data. For example, even the population data, to be able to generate and analyze it for data analytics. Now, we use the data to make our decisions, but before we make our decisions, we need to capture the data, clean it for our purposes, transform that into something usable, and then we create the data models. Now, data modeling basically is to model the data suitable for our analysis purposes. So we may have different analytics requirements for us to make different kind of decisions. So the data modeling will basically take the raw data and analyze it and create measures out of it, create meaningful insights out of it, and connect them to each other so that there is a relationship between the data, between the different sources of data, and we could cross refer using certain keys or foreign keys or product keys or whatever unique identification that we want to create, and then use this model to analyze the data into further details to create visualizations. So then the next step is to make it easy, because the data could be in millions of rows. Now that millions of rows need to be translated into something easy to understand visualizations could be your charts, your graph, your maps, your tables, or just even a single card where we are saying a number only, or it could be multi level cards where we just say the number and the label of the number. That's it. So it could be anything. It could be related with very complex charts, beautiful charts, customized ones, or the standard ones, or it could be through a map where we show the data over the map, we plot the map. Um, we could have used the tables, which are also powerful media of visualizations. So that visualizations help the peoples to understand the data and understand the point that we want to really emphasize. So we will be looking at in this course over the some principles of visualization. What are the principles of visualization? How we visualize the data? What are the different charts that can be used, and in what scenario we use them, right? There may be multiple ways to visualize the data, but what is the most effective way? What is the easier way for for the audience to understand the data? So we will be covering up some certain principles of data visualizations as well. And then finally, once you have done all the hard work of getting the data, modeling the data, creating the visualizations, it's not use unless you are able to share it with your audience. So you need to be able to share it with your audience through your website, through the Power BI service, through the presentation, through the in the print. So Power BI has a lot of tools by which you can share the data. So that's the crux of the business intelligence, and we will be learning all these four steps in this particular class. Now, what are the Power BI tools for this each step? The Power BI offers a lot of tools for each step. So, getting the data, there is Power BI service and a Power BI desktop. Power BI desktop includes the Power BI analytical engine, data analysis engine, and also a query engine. The query engine is used for importing the data into Power BI and transforming it for different purposes, which we are going to learn in details now. After the data has been imported into the Power BI, then the next thing is to model the data. Now, modeling the data is very easy in Power BI desktop because that is an offline service. Power BI service is an online requirement where it may not have enough RAM or enough analytical power to be able to model the data. So it's better to use the Power BI desktop for modeling the data and analyzing the data rather than doing the Power BI service. Power BI service is great for getting the data in and also visualizing the data or creating the visuals, creating the reports out of it. But Power BI desktop is better for modeling the data. Both can do the visualization, both can do the service, both can create the reports, and you could teleport between the two services, Power BI desktop and Power BI service, into each other easily, right? So there is no problem with that. Then after that, you share with your team. Power BI desktop is not something which you can use for sharing with your team. You need to use only Power BI service. For that, you need to have Power BI Pro license. If you have a Power BI free license, then you can share it with yourself only. So you will not be able to share it with your team members. But with Power BI Pro license, you are able to share it with anybody else. And there are Power BI mobile apps as well, where people can look at the dashboards, charts through their mobile apps and while on the go and interact with them. So the interactivity is still there. You will not lose the interactivity with the chart, and the users will still be able to filter out the information or create their own charts if you permit them, of course, and get the insights from the data in real time. So that's the Power BI tools. In this class, we are going to focus mostly on Power BI desktop, and then we will also look at the Power BI service for sharing purposes. So even the getting data and visualization is exactly the same in Power BI service and Power BI desktop. But since Power BI desktop is great for data model, we will be working on the same tool for throughout the course, except for sharing. So in the sharing, in the creating the dashboards or sharing the information with the users, we will be using a Power BI service tool, and then we will be showing you how do we share the information. Now the that comes to the introduction part. Now, the first thing that we have to understand is the data transformation. So here are certain very common things that we are going to learn. After this slide, we will be going into Power BI and learn from ourselves. But here are certain common data transformation that we need usually, and we will be practicing. So we need basically headers. Then we need a header row for all the tables, all the data that we are importing. Sometimes when we are inputting the data, there is no header. There are blank rows, or the system will just say column one, column two, column three. That usually happens even in Excel when you are importing the data from outside. Usually you will not had a row, but we need to tell the Power BI this column is for what, this row is for what. So need to have a header, need to have an index rows. Then there may be, usually with the data that comes out of the text files or from the ERP, there are multiple rows and there are multiple columns which we don't want in our analysis. So it's always better and prudent to clean them out so that the data size is reduced and the performance and the speed of the analytical engine of the Power BI is faster. So we will have to remove unnecessary columns out of the system. So we will be learning that. Then there are usually either we split the columns into two or we merge the columns into one. So that usually is a process which we are also going to learn in the Power BI query and also in the DAX engines. Then you will have to add certain columns and additional columns, helper columns, to help you with the analysis of the data or sort the data in the charts or in the tables or in the formats. So we're going to be learning them how we add the columns. Then there is something called unpivot. We will be learning that more in details when we go into the actual data visualization. Unpivot generally means that we may have a data in a table format where we have on the row side we have certain attributes, on the columns we may have like other attributes. But Power BI, in the Power BI generally we want to have columnar data, row data only, where more on the rows, not on the columns. So let's say imagine there is a table called product information over the period of years, where you have January column, February column, March column, April column. So the more columns you have in the data is usually difficult for Power BI, and it takes time for them to analyze the data. So instead of having a lot of columns, it's better to have a lot of rows. So that's where the unpivot comes into the picture, and we extract the data out for onto the rows. Then there are usually duplicates in the data. Sometimes it can have duplicates, it can have blanks, it can have values that we don't want, that we want to replace. So we are going to learn that aspect as well when we are going into the Power BI engine. So now let's start the Power BI desktop for our purposes. So I have already downloaded it. So you can, if you don't have it, you can download the Power BI desktop from your system and then fire it up. So Power BI you can download free from powerbi.microsoft.com, and there are usually releases, new releases all the time in the Power BI. So you have to ensure that you have the latest service in with you. So once you open up the Power BI, if it recognize that you have an account with the Power BI, so it will log you in automatically. Otherwise, it will just be without any login, and then it will immediately offer you what is the new, what's new in there, because Power BI is generated updated every month. That's why you will get the new features all the time. So you can always look at what's new in this particular month that is launched into the Power BI. There are forums. If you get stuck with anything else, then you can go into the forums and ask your questions, or Power BI, read Power BI blogs. There are tutorials with the sample data on, and also with the how we create the charts. So if you get stuck with any of the feature or don't know how to navigate through it, you can always go into the tutorials and watch these videos. In this video we are going to take you through the basic aspects of the Power BI, not every single feature, but what is the most essential features. So we will be covering that. And then on the left side you can see here we have option for get data or the recent resources. So if whatever resources we have used in the past, it also will be listed here so that we can use it. Or you can open the existing reports in Power BI, whichever has been generated or shared with you, so you could actually use this one. Now we will close this file, we will not go into the get data from here. Before we start, let me give you a brief introduction of this interface. The interface is pretty easy. So let's start with the left side first. The left side, the first column is the visualization pane here. So we need to have a data and have a data model before we visualize anything. But this is something visualization pane or report pane. It can have multiple pages. So here you can see on the bottom left, you have page one. You can change the page name and the plus sign in the yellow. You could click it to get more pages. So you can have as many as pages as you want for the report. And then you can select the reports from that pages and pin them to the dashboard. So that's a possibility here. So this is purely for the reporting and visualizations. Then the next option here is the table view. So it will create, if you have a table, then it will show tables here with the data, what has been used in the data model. And then there is a something called relationship view, which we also going to look into the future. So basically it will show a relationship between all the tables that we have in our data model. And we could use this pane also to create more relationship if we want, or look at how the data is structured, which table is linked with what table and what is the relationship. So we could manage the all the relationships through here. So that's the left pane. Now let's go back to the report pane and look at this right side. So the right side, there are two major panes here, three major panes here. One is filter, which is used for filtering the data, filtering the visualization. We can use this filter to create filters for the report. We don't create slicer or anything else from here because slicer is a separate report from the in the Power BI. So there's a different visualization. So this is mostly used for filtering the data for certain years or certain things that we want to use. We could filter the data for all the pages or on certain visualizations only. So this is flexible. So you can filter on this page only or filter on all the pages. So we could say we want to see only 2020 data. So we could put the data here, date field here, and select 2020 only. So all the reports, all the pages will always be selected to the current month or the one that we choose. So that's filter pane. Then there is a visualization pane, which is used for creating the visualization. So you can see here there are multiple visualizations which are available and even more. So there are get more visualizations. You can import visualizations from a file or from the add-ins. So there are add-ins into the Power BI which you can source through the Power BI store. So we will be learning the standard ones first in this particular course, not the add-ins. And then the last one and last and not the least and the very important aspect of this pane is the fields, which is similar to what you will see in the Power Pivot in the pivot table in Excel, when which is giving the fields there to use for analysis in one side of the pane, which we can drill down through the or we can use it for row, column, or values or whatever. So that's the field pane, right? So and then we will come up to the ribbon, the data ribbon. So here is we have file ribbon, which is just only to save and import the files. Then you have home ribbon, which is used mostly for here. The most important aspect is data pane in this home ribbon, which is used for getting the data. So you can get the data from multiple options. You can get data from Excel workbook or existing Power BI data sets or Dataverse. If you have subscribed to the Dataverse service from the Microsoft, you could get it from the SQL server, text file, web. You can connect a website, and then it will pull in the data automatically. Mostly useful for like websites like Yahoo Finance or other financial websites which are publishing the data through their web platform. And then you could have a blank query, or there are more. If you had to download the data through the folders, so that's most useful when we have to get the data from the folder, from the PDF, or from the access or from SQL or any other ways that we have a lot of options for us to generate, and we can just only connect. So the important point here is we always create a connect towards the main source. So it's not that we are changing the main source. So whatever data modeling you do in this Power BI after connecting the data, it will not download a entire data set into the Power BI, but will create connections into the database. And then whatever modeling we are doing, it will only remain in the Power BI model, not not going to affect the original data source. So that's a very important thing to remember. Then there are the other options. So we learned about this. We can actually enter the data manually as well. So once we have downloaded the data, which we are going to do in a bit after I introduce this entire section to you, you have queries, which is when we download the data from the Power BI, it's generally converted into tables, and each table is called a query, or you can say a power, and then you can this query or this particular table, you could transform the data inside that thing by using Power Query. So once you are downloading the data, the first option it will give, for example, let's say now let's download one data from the Power BI. Let's say download our first txt file. So I have in the materials which we will be giving you the link to download, there are csv files. So let's say I downloaded one file first, and then we will delete it because we will show you the different options to download. So let's say one file is downloaded here. So click open on it, and then it will create a connection between the csv file and the Power BI file. It will give you an interface automatically, because the CSV file Power BI knows that the delimiter to convert the text file or this CSV file into the Power BI data table is going to be the comma delimiter, and it will show the data sample data on the based on the first 200 rows. So you could see what is the data here, sample data, and if you are happy with it, you can just go to either load it or transform the data. So as a best practice, we never load the data directly into the Power BI data model, because we need to transform it before. Here, I if the data is all good, I have both the options. You could load it directly or you could transform the data. But because I can see my date is actually not in the proper format, so I should transform it before I download it, right? And then you can change the file name. So let's say I click on transform the data, it will open up in something called Power Query Editor. So that editor is already there, and it will usually create certain steps. So be, so now the Power Query is another tool within the Power BI. It doesn't come separately. You don't have to download it separately. It will come automatically, and it's the tool which is used for transformation of the data. Now, how do we transform the data? Let me quickly get you familiarized with this particular tool as well before we go. So similar to Power BI tool, it also has three different panes. One on this side is the list of queries. If you have multiple tables, it will list down here all the queries. So as I said, each table is considered one query. You can have multiple queries here, not a problem at all. You could have multiple tables here, multiple queries, or you can append them into one by putting all the queries into one particular form, or you can combine them by the rows. When we combine two queries to add the columns, it's called merge queries. And when we add the rows, let's say we have a data for 2017 here. If we download the data for 2018, 2019, 2020, then we will have multiple tables, right? But when we are analyzing the Power BI, in the Power BI, we don't want to have um, multiple tables for analyzing into it. So we have to combine them into one so that the analysis is more powerful. So once we want to add rows, it's called append queries, and you can see it here on the pane in the under the home ribbon. The first thing is the new query. You can add new query, new data source. You can add the new CSV file here, and you could enter the data manually as well. Then you can change the data source, manage the parameters, which will be learned later on. And then there are certain there are certain things that we could do with the columns and rows. So we could choose the column which we want in Power BI. So once you click on choose column, it will show the list of columns in this particular Power BI. And if you want to remove certain column from here, we just need to unclick it, uncheck it, and click OK. So it will not delete the column, but it will remove the column from the Power BI data model. So sometimes when we are not sure which that whether this column will be useful or not in the future, what we do is we choose the column and we remain the column in the data set rather than removing it. But if we are sure that we don't need this particular column, we can go ahead and remove the column. So we will be learning that in more details later on. Then you have rows. You could delete rows if you need it, and then split the columns column by. So these are multiple options that we are given. Then there are certain options for transforming the data into what we want to do: replace values, split the columns, or use the first row as as the header, unpivot the data where we see unpivot columns, any column, all whatever we want to do with this particular column is here. And then you can add more columns here by click on add column by column from samples, which will be explaining you later how do we do that. And then there are a view for just to see how it is displayed here. So there's no data modeling here, there's no transformation here, it just show the view only. So we could see the column quality, column distribution. So we remove the column distribution if we don't want to see this. If you remove the column quality, then just only the column name and the rows, that's it. But we, as a best practice, I normally keep the column quality and the column distribution open so that I can see if there is any error in the data or empty rows that I need to address. So it's a because the data could be in millions of rows, right? uh, Power BI is just going to show us only 100, a few rows, right? Not the entire data set. And the profiling is normally based on up to 1000 rows. So here you can see on the bottom left, it shows 6 column 999 plus rows, so it doesn't show all the rows. And then the column profiling is based on top 1000 rows. So you could actually go and click it and say column profiling should be based on entire data set. So it will recalculate the column profiles and the column quality, and it will give us the result based on the entire data set. And it will also tell us how many columns, how many rows are there. So we could scroll down and see how many rows are there. You can go as little as low as possible. It will keep on adding the number of rows. So we don't want to do that now. And then the last is the tools for diagnose or other things, which these are not necessary for transformation. So we will gonna be learning them at a later stage. Then the other important aspect of this Power Query tool is basically this query settings. So here you can change the name of the table. This name is very important because this is how it will show in our field list that we saw earlier, which we will show you now in just a bit. So we need to give it a name which is useful for us to understand what is the date. And then it will also give us the applied steps, what steps we are applying to transform the data. Let's say if you want to delete any data, or if you want to let's say we go to the choose column, and we remove, let's say for example, discount, for just to see it. If you remove it, then you will see here there is a step edit automatically to say removed other columns. Now this is just a step. If you say it's I have accidentally done it, you could always go and click on this red X button, small red X button, and remove this step. And if you remove this step, the column will come back automatically. So this is a very powerful, you can say, it's a recipe card of how we have done it. Why it's more powerful? Because let's say you have downloaded another query, or you have refreshed the data, you have added more data into this particular table into the original, and you refresh it. So the data will flow to the Power BI, and the Power Query will apply the same steps to the original file when the new data is inputted into the Power Query, and add the data to this particular table. So it will not just add the data whatever it is, because otherwise you have to keep on manually go in, change the data type, remove certain columns from here. Rather than that, the Power BI will do it for you based on certain recipe. So you have provided the recipe to, or the steps to the Power BI, that what steps need to be followed and in which order. Power BI will go into the pull in the new data, apply all these steps to the data transformation which you have used, and append into the query automatically for you. So you don't have to worry about it. So that's the very useful tool for us. Now, this was the brief introduction of Power BI. How do we do actually transformation data? We're gonna learn later. So once you have finished it, let's say you can go and close and apply, so you will be able to see that there is something, so this tool is this Power Query that we have just loaded, is going to be loaded into this Power BI tool, and now you can see that in the fields pane you have the total sales 2017. That's why I was saying the name of the table has to be good, because this is how it will show when you go into table view. You will be able to see this data as a table, and and the name will be from here. So then, and when you are going into this, then you also will be see the name here. So the name is a very important idea. Name is a very important thing which you have to actually make sure that is the name is correct. Even if let's say you forgot to change the name there, you could always come here, double click it and change the name. So that's not a problem. That is fine. So that is the Power BI query, Power BI and Power Query introduction only. And then these fields we can use in our data pane, that we will do later, because we never go and add the columns only directly to the visualization pane. We have to transform it, and we have to for value fields we have to create certain explicit measure which we are going to learn later during this class. So let me close this file without saving it, because I will re-download this data into the Power Query by using the other methods. That was the introduction. So I will download this data into the Power BI, and we will be doing these data transformations together with the data. But before that, let me explain you also certain other basic aspects of the tables and data. So in the table structure, there is in the Power BI, you have seen that one table was called one query, but there are different type of tables that we use in Power BI. One is called lookup table. Now, lookup table basically means that it's just a dimension table. For example, if you are looking at the table that we downloaded, sales 2017 was a fact table. Fact means this is what we are going to analyze. This is the sales that we want to analyze. The lookup table is going to be the information. If you have remembered, or if you have might have noticed, there were certain columns like product key, product name, sales representative identity, but you don't have all the data for analysis purposes. You don't have the product name, product color, product category, everything, right? So we need those detailed information also when we want to analyze and slice and dice the data. We want to know what color of the product has been the highest sale, what category is the highest sale, what are the top 15 products that we are selling, or this where which region we are selling more, right? So we want to know all of this information, but in the fact table we don't have all the information, because fact table is usually a very thin table containing only certain key transactions like the date, the product code, the sales representation code, the quantity, the value, or the price, or maybe the value or the cost price, right? So it doesn't have all the data inside it. We have to have other tables. So for that we will be we so there are certain things called like schema, which we will be explaining you now. How does it work? So we have to have a dimension table to look into the different dimensions of other details of our product, our stores, our factories, our regions that we are selling in. So these are the two tables which are connected, lookup table and fact table. So we have to establish what is a fact table and which one is a lookup table. So we have to establish them separately. Lookup table is also called dimension tables, and the dimension tables, and the fact table is also called the fact table, and there's no other name for the fact table. Then there is something called date table. In Power BI, to be able to do the analysis on the time intelligence, like for example, if you want to look at the quarterly sales last year quarter or similar same quarter last year or 2 years back, we need to have something called date table, because usually in the fact table the dates are there, but they may not be complete dates. So Power BI needs a date table in order to understand the continuity of the date, and then it can apply the analysis on that particular date table. So we need to have a date table, which we will going to learn how we create the date table, because the date tables are generally not available automatically outside the Power BI. So we need to have that date table. Then within these dates, within these tables, let's say we have 10 tables, we normally create relationship between the fact table and the lookup table or to the date table. So there can be multiple lookup tables which are connected to the same fact table, and that's why we call it star schema or snowflake, which we are going to learn now what are these. And the most common relationship between these fact table and lookup table is created as one to many relationship. Now, what is the meaning of one to many relationship? Usually, in the lookup table, there is only one row, one product, right? They are unique, correct? So in the product table, there will be one row per product. But in the fact tables, the product can be sold multiple times. So when we are creating a relationship between the lookup table and the fact table, the relationship is created one to many, one in the lookup table, one product, and many products in the fact table. So that's usually is the relationship. It generally don't go other way around, like fact table to lookup table as one to many. Generally it will not happen like this. There could be another scenario where we have multiple products in lookup tables, and we create many to many relationship. Well, that's not a ideal scenario, because many to many relationships are not easy to handle in Power BI. It requires advanced skills, but most generally is used one to many. Now, what is star schema? So when we are creating relationship between the lookup table and fact table, it would look something like this. So there is a fact table where we have revenue, we have the IDs of different thing, dealer, model, branch, date, and other things. And then this fact table is connected with other dimension tables, so which is dimension other like location table, la country table, details about the dealers, details about the dates, details about the dies, details about the product, and other things. Now this kind of, and sometimes the dimension table is also connected with other tables to get more grains. Now this type of data is not really an ideal data, because Power BI has to take a reference from this one dimension table, and then this dimension table will be linked with another table. It creates multiple steps, and the Power BI will become slower. So compared to this is called snowflake data scheme, which is not a good data type. The relationship type, the best relationship type is star schema, where um, one fact table is connected to the different dimension tables, and there is no direct relationship between the dimension tables, or these dimension tables are not linked with another dimension table. So that's called the star schema, and the right side is called the snowflake. Snowflake is not an ideal situation in Power BI, star schema is preferred, but there are certain exceptions where we have to create a snowflake for a couple of dimension tables to get the better analysis, but we will deal with them in a later stage. So these are the two type of relationships that we can create in the tables structure. Then the another thing to understand about the table structure is the granularity. Now, granularity means that how detailed is our transaction. Some tables are at the transaction level. Some tables are, let's say there is a let's say there's an example here. So there is two table here. One is sales order and one is sales order detail. Now the first table, the granularity is by sales order ID. So one line per order. But there could be another table which has multiple sales orders and multiple lines for each sales order by product. Now these are two, both are the fact tables, and they both have different granularity. One is only by the sales order and the other is going as detailed as to the product level. So the granularity is different. So when we are creating our analytics, we have to make sure that the granularity is the same between the fact tables and the or when we are creating the relationships, so that the analysis is done properly. The granularity can be by day, by month, by year, or by category, or by the product level. So it could have different granularities, and we have to remember that we have to have same granularity when we are comparing the data. So that's about the Power BI uh, table structure and also the transformation. Now let's look at one example of how we actually do the import and transformation. So we're gonna open up the Power BI desktop again.